When Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was elected, he promised, among many other things, a reform to the way Canadians access their government's information. Because the government's information is actually the people's information. That's the point of access to information laws. That's the point of freedom of information laws. And Trudeau, to his credit, said it was very important that Canadians had a streamlined and modernized way to get a hold of documents that were directly relevant to how they're being governed and how their money is being spent. Now, he's been in office for less than a couple of years. The cracks are starting to form in the wall on that, and his promise of reforming access to information is one of these key areas. Wanted to highlight one particular document here, Indigenous Affairs. The minister of this document is Liberal MP Carolyn Bennett. And the bureaucrats in this department didn't seem to get the memo that Trudeau wanted Canadians to have more access to information rather than less. In fact, they were even going about their emails to such an extent that they were trying to say, and being very brazen about it, that they wanted to avoid information getting out. They wanted to avoid it actually being a tip. This is the problem here. So this all comes down to money that the federal government gave to the Nunavut Planning Commission. There was about $5.3 million a year that's getting put towards that group in perpetuity. In one particular year, just 2 years ago, it was about $7 million. And there have been about $55 million in grants and funding since 2001 towards the NPC. Now, there was also a federal audit that was done to make sure that the money was being spent the way it was supposed to. The audit felt that the organization was well managed, but there were some issues with where the money was going and the actual mandate. But the audit was not a public document. The audit was, despite the fact that it was taxpayers' money going towards this group, solely for the government's purpose in deciding future funding. And the bureaucrats were well aware of this. In one of the documents, the people are talking about media lines, things that they're going to do if the press start asking questions about it. And on August 8th, 2016, the audit had been completed. Catherine Conrad, who's a director in the Natural Resources Division, said on the proposed lines, "In general, I'm not very comfortable reviewing and commenting on these lines, since I have not seen nor am I aware of the contents of the financial review report. I know this is not intended to become a public doc, but it can, and it may be ATIP'd. So I would like to have a sense of any possible related sensitivities." Now, part of the concern that I have, she avoids using the word audit, perhaps because if someone were to do an ATIP on the word audit, they would have found that email. So financial review is what it gets called instead in that interview. That's just one of many. That same woman, Catherine Conrad, also said in another email, "Some of the findings could be fairly sensitive if made public. Perhaps you have discussed next steps, would be interested in hearing how this is being managed with NPC, but mainly for info in regards to our ongoing working relationship with the organization." So they're talking about the fact that because the money is not being spent the way it's supposed to be, according to the audit, they're concerned about sensitivities with the Aboriginal community. Well, why are we trying to protect an organization that got audited and that audit revealed information that shouldn't have been there? And by the way, didn't give the auditors access to certain information. But it goes on. Sample media lines that they were passing about in the office say quite clearly, "The report will inform funding decisions and will not be made public." This was never meant to be something that Canadians were actually going to have access to, even though we're talking about the way Canadians' money was being spent here. And this is one of the most interesting parts here, because as they were preparing media lines, knowing that people in the press were aware of the audit, the financial review, and we're going to ask about it, they wanted to choose their words very carefully, which is the prerogative of a communications office. But Ann Scotton said, "I suggest we do not say, quote, however the results, unquote. If there's a request, we can say it then. Saying it now may excite interest, and I believe the document is atypical. I would be happy to discuss at a meeting so that this can be resolved." She doesn't want to give a clue in a media line that there might be something there that people could ATIP. And then she also offered to have a discussion in a meeting, which you can't summon under access to information, rather than in emails. So this government, despite the fact that the Prime Minister has said access to information is essential in a democratic society, in the Aboriginal Affairs Department, bureaucrats are still going out of their way to avoid ATIPs, out of their way to avoid having information that could be summoned by the public, even though they're aware that that information is in fact something to which Canadians are entitled. So much for a new road forward for transparency. For the Rebel.media, I'm Andrew Lawton. Hey, check out the Rebel.media for lots more great content, and for those of you really committed to saving Western civilization, check out premium memberships only at the Rebel.media.